There comes a moment in your life when you have to stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. There comes a moment when you realize that every argument does not deserve your voice, every accusation does not deserve your defense, and every opinion does not deserve your attention. Sometimes your greatest response is not a response at all. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. Silence is maturity. Silence is knowing that you do not have to prove your worth to everybody who questions it. You have spent too much time trying to convince people that you are valuable. You have spent too much energy explaining your intentions, defending your heart, correcting rumors, answering criticism, and responding to people who only wanted to provoke you. But what if you stopped? What if you stopped chasing every misunderstanding? What if you stopped responding to every comment? What if you stopped announcing every move? What if you stopped telling everybody what you are planning, what you are building, what you are praying for, and where you are going? You might discover something powerful. Your silence can increase your value. Because when you are constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly talking, constantly revealing, people stop appreciating the weight of your presence. But when you learn to become comfortable with silence, you create space for your character to speak. You don't have to tell everybody that you're changing. Change. You don't have to announce that you're growing. Grow. You don't have to tell everybody that you're becoming stronger. Become stronger. You don't have to convince people that you have a purpose. Walk in it. Let your life become the evidence. There is power in moving quietly. There is power in allowing people to underestimate you while you prepare. There is power in refusing to give your enemies information they can use against you. There is power in protecting your peace from conversations that were designed to steal it. Your silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you have learned that everything does not deserve to be said. And that is where your value begins to rise. The first thing you must understand is that silence protects your energy. Not every conversation deserves access to your emotions. Some people don't want an answer, they want a reaction. They want to pull you into an argument because your reaction gives them control. They know which words irritate you. They know which subjects trigger you. They know how to push your buttons. And if you keep responding, they keep controlling the atmosphere around you. But when you become silent, you take your power back. You stop giving people the ability to determine your emotional temperature. You stop allowing somebody else's behavior to dictate your behavior. You stop handing strangers the remote control to your peace. There is a difference between being silent because you are afraid and being silent because you are wise. Fear says, I have nothing to say. Wisdom says, I could say something, but it would not produce anything. A maturity says, I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. You don't have to defend yourself against every accusation. Time has a way of revealing what arguments cannot. Character has a way of speaking when words have become exhausted. Let people talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them create their version of the story. You keep walking. Because if you spend your entire life correcting everybody's opinion of you, you will never have enough time to become the person you were created to be. Your energy is precious. Your attention is precious. Your peace is precious. Guard it. The second thing you must understand is that silence allows your actions to become louder than your announcements. There are people who talk about everything they are going to do, but they never do it. They announce the dream before they have built the discipline. They reveal the plan before they have developed the patience. They tell everybody where they are going before they have taken the first real step. But sometimes you need to stop talking and start building. Don't tell everybody what you are becoming. Become it. Don't spend all your time announcing the vision. Work on the vision. Don't keep explaining that you're going to change. Change your habits. Don't keep telling people that you're going to succeed. Prepare yourself for success. There is a special kind of power that comes from working in silence and letting the results introduce you. When people see what you have built, they don't need an explanation. When they see your discipline, they don't need your announcement. When they see your growth, they don't need your speech. Your results become your testimony. And sometimes the greatest comeback is not a paragraph. It is progress. You don't need to tell the person who doubted you that they were wrong. Keep growing. You don't need to tell the person who rejected you that they made a mistake. Keep growing. You don't need to prove that you can make it without them. Keep growing, because your life is not a courtroom, and you do not have to spend every day presenting evidence to people who don't believe in you. Build quietly, learn quietly. Pray quietly. Prepare quietly. And when the time comes, let the fruit speak. The third thing you must understand is that silence creates mystery, and mystery creates respect. When everybody knows everything about you, there is nothing left to discover. But when you learn to keep certain things private, you create boundaries around your life. Not everybody needs to know your next move. Not everybody needs to know your struggles. Not everybody needs to know your plans. Not everybody needs to know what you are praying about. Some dreams need privacy while they are growing. A seed does not become a tree because you keep digging it up to show everybody that it is growing. You have to leave it in the ground. You have to let it develop. You have to let time do its work. And there are seasons in your life when you need to stop exposing everything and start protecting what is being developed inside you. Everybody who asks you a question does not automatically deserve the answer. Everybody who is curious about your life does not automatically deserve access to it. Boundaries are not bitterness. Privacy is not arrogance. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is simply the wisdom to understand that what is valuable must be protected. The fourth thing you must understand is that silence gives you time to listen, learn, and discern. When you are always talking, you can miss what is happening around you. But when you become quiet, you begin to notice things. You notice patterns, you notice motives, you notice opportunities. You notice who celebrates you and who only celebrates what you can do for them. You notice who respects your boundaries and who becomes angry when you establish them. Silence gives you information. When you stop filling every empty space with words, you begin hearing what people reveal without realizing they are revealing it. And sometimes you don't need to ask another question. Just watch. Watch how they treat people who cannot help them. Watch how they respond when you say no. Watch how they behave when you succeed. Watch how they behave when you are struggling. Watch who stays when there is nothing to gain. Observation will teach you things that conversation never could. You don't always need to confront people. Sometimes you simply need to understand them. And once you understand them, you can make wiser decisions about how much access they should have to your life. The fifth thing you must understand is that silence prepares you for the next level of your life. There are seasons when you have to withdraw, not because you hate people, but because you need to hear yourself think. You need space to reflect, space to heal, space to learn, space to pray, space to become disciplined, space to discover who you are without everybody else's opinions surrounding you. You cannot hear your direction when you are addicted to everybody else's noise. Sometimes you need to step away from the crowd long enough to remember what matters. You need to stop asking, what will they think, and start asking, what is right for me? Stop asking, will they approve? And start asking, am I becoming wiser? Stop asking, do they understand me? And start asking, do I understand my purpose? Because your future cannot be built on the opinions of people who are not responsible for your future. You have a life to live. You have growth ahead of you. You have lessons to learn. You have work to do. And you cannot spend every day responding to yesterday. So become comfortable with silence. Let silence teach you patience. Let silence teach you discipline. Let silence teach you discernment. Let silence teach you restraint. Let silence teach you that your worth does not increase because everyone approves of you. Your value comes from knowing who you are and refusing to abandon yourself just because somebody else does not recognize your worth. There will be people who misunderstand your silence. Let them. There will be people who call your silence weakness. Let them. There will be people who wonder why you are no longer explaining yourself. Let them wonder. You don't owe everybody an explanation. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing. Sometimes the most powerful answer is your consistency. Sometimes the loudest declaration is your transformation. And sometimes the person who thinks they have lost your voice will eventually discover that they are simply hearing the sound of you becoming wiser. So be quiet when quietness protects your peace. Be quiet when words would only create another argument. Be quiet when your plans need protection. Be quiet when you are still becoming. But never confuse silence with surrender. You can be silent and still be strong. You can be quiet and still have boundaries. You can walk away without being defeated. You can refuse to argue without being weak. You can protect your peace without apologizing for it. Your silence is not the absence of power. Sometimes your silence is the evidence that you have finally learned how to control your power. And when you learn that, something changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining your worth. You stop fighting every battle. You stop giving everyone access to your emotions. You stop announcing every move. And you begin to move differently, calmer, wiser. stronger, more intentional, because you finally understand not everything needs a response. Not everyone needs an explanation. Not every battle deserves your energy. Sometimes say less, work more, grow more, listen more, pray more, and let your life speak. Because when your character becomes strong enough, you won't have to shout to be heard. When your work becomes excellent enough, you won't have to beg to be recognized. When your purpose becomes clear enough, you won't need everybody's approval. And when your peace becomes valuable enough, you will stop trading it for arguments that were never worth your time. Your silence can become the place where your strength is rebuilt. Your silence can become the room where your vision becomes clear. Your silence can become the discipline that prepares you for what comes next. So don't be afraid of silence. Learn from it. Use it, protect it. Because sometimes the less you say, the more people are forced to watch. And when they watch long enough, they will see what words could never explain. You are not disappearing. You are developing. You are not losing your voice. You are learning when to use it. And when you finally speak, your words will carry the weight of everything you built while you were silent. The first thing you must understand is that silence protects your energy. You cannot afford to give your energy to everything that demands your attention. There are too many voices, too many opinions, too many distractions, and too many people who will try to pull you into battles that have nothing to do with your purpose. You have to learn that every situation does not deserve your reaction. Every comment does not deserve an answer. Every accusation does not deserve a defense. Every misunderstanding does not require an explanation. And every person who tries to provoke you does not deserve access to your emotions. Some people are not looking for peace. They are looking for a reaction. They want to say something that will make you angry. They want to push you until you lose your patience. They want you to say something you will later regret. They want you to become so emotional that you forget who you are. But you have to learn how to recognize the trap. You don't have to step into every argument simply because someone opened the door. You don't have to prove that you are right every time somebody says you are wrong. You don't have to defend your character against every person who chooses to misunderstand it. There is power in looking at a situation and saying, this is not worth my peace. That is maturity, that is discipline, that is strength. Because anybody can react, anybody can become angry, anybody can raise their voice, anybody can send the message they wish they had never sent, anybody can speak without thinking. But it takes strength to pause. It takes strength to breathe. It takes strength to walk away from a conversation that is becoming destructive. It takes strength to say nothing when you know that saying something will only make the situation worse. Your silence becomes powerful when you realize that your emotions belong to you. Nobody else should have complete control over your emotional state. If somebody can insult you and immediately control your mood, they have been given too much power. If somebody can criticize you and suddenly make you question your worth, they have been given too much power. If somebody can ignore you and make you chase them for attention, they have been given too much power. If somebody can provoke you and make you abandon your values, they have been given too much power. Take that power back. You don't have to react. You can observe. You can think. You can breathe. You can choose. And sometimes your greatest victory is simply refusing to become the version of yourself that someone else is trying to provoke. There will be moments when people expect you to argue, but you remain calm. There will be moments when people expect you to explain yourself, but you remain silent. There will be moments when people expect you to chase them, but you continue walking. And they may not understand it. They may ask, why aren't you responding? Because you finally understand the value of your energy. You finally understand that peace is expensive. You finally understand that emotional energy is limited. You finally understand that every minute you spend fighting unnecessary battles is a minute you could have spent building your future. Think about how much energy people waste trying to prove themselves. They argue with strangers. They respond to every comment. They defend themselves against rumors. They explain every decision. They try to make everyone understand their intentions. They spend hours thinking about what someone said. And while they are busy defending themselves, life is moving forward without them. Don't allow that to become your story. You have dreams that require your attention. You have goals that require your discipline. You have responsibilities that require your focus. You have a future that needs your energy. So stop giving your best energy to things that produce nothing. There is a difference between being responsible and being reactive. Responsibility asks, what should I do? Reactivity asks, how can I respond? Responsibility thinks about the outcome. Reactivity thinks about the moment, and if you live your life only responding to the moment, you can destroy what you are building for the future. One angry moment can create a problem that takes months to repair. One careless statement can damage a relationship. One emotional decision can take you away from your purpose. That is why silence can be a form of protection. Silence gives you time. And sometimes time is exactly what you need before you respond. When emotions are high, wait. When you're angry, wait. When you're hurt, wait. When somebody has provoked you, wait. You don't have to answer immediately. You don't have to respond immediately. You don't have to make a decision immediately. Give yourself enough space to think clearly, because when your emotions settle, your perspective often changes. What seemed like an emergency may no longer feel important. What seemed like an insult may no longer deserve your attention. What seemed like a battle may reveal itself as a distraction. Silence creates that space, and in that space, you can choose wisdom instead of impulse. You can choose patience instead of anger. You can choose dignity instead of desperation. You can choose peace instead of chaos. There is another kind of energy you must protect, the energy you spend explaining yourself. You will meet people who have already decided what they think about you. No matter what you say, they will twist it. No matter what you explain, they will question it. No matter how clearly you communicate, they will interpret it according to what they already believe. And if you spend your entire life trying to change the minds of people committed to misunderstanding you, you will exhaust yourself. Sometimes you have to let people have their opinion. Let them think what they think. Let them say what they say. You know your heart. You know your intentions. You know the work you have done. And more importantly, your life will eventually reveal what words cannot. You don't have to defend every chapter of your life while you are still writing the story. Keep writing, keep growing, keep becoming. Let time reveal the truth, because sometimes the strongest response to criticism is not an argument, it is consistency. They say you cannot do it. You keep working. They say you will never change. You keep growing. They say you are not capable. You keep learning. They question your decisions. You remain focused, not because you are trying to prove them wrong, but because you are committed to becoming right within yourself. That is an important distinction. Don't build your life simply to prove somebody else wrong. Build your life because you know you have more inside you. Don't become successful just so somebody who rejected you will regret it. Become successful because you owe yourself the opportunity to discover what you are capable of becoming. Don't improve yourself just so people will notice. Improve yourself because your future deserves a stronger version of you. When your motivation comes from within, people's opinions lose their power over you. And that's when silence becomes easier. You don't need to respond because you are no longer living for their approval. You don't need to explain because you are no longer asking permission to become who you are. You don't need to argue because your focus has shifted from being understood to being intentional. Your peace becomes more important than being right. Your growth becomes more important than being noticed. Your purpose becomes more important than being applauded. And when you reach that place, you begin to understand that silence is not empty. Silence is full of choices. It gives you the opportunity to choose your words carefully. It gives you the opportunity to choose your battles wisely. It gives you the opportunity to choose your future over your feelings. And that is where your strength begins to mature. You start asking yourself before responding, will this matter tomorrow? Will this move me closer to the person I want to become? Is this worth my peace? Does this conversation need my voice? Am I responding from wisdom or from emotion? Those questions can save you from unnecessary pain, because not every battle is worth winning. Sometimes you win by refusing to participate. Sometimes you win by walking away. Sometimes you win by remaining calm. Sometimes you win by letting silence answer what words cannot. And the more you practice this, the more you realize how much energy you were wasting. You were wasting energy trying to control people's opinions. You were wasting energy trying to make everybody understand you. You were wasting energy responding to people who had no intention of respecting you. You were wasting energy carrying conversations that should have ended long ago. Now you are learning to redirect that energy. Put it into your goals. Put it into your education. Put it into your creativity. Put it into your discipline. Put it into becoming wiser. Put it into building something meaningful. Put it into becoming someone you can be proud of. Because your energy is one of the greatest resources you have. And when you stop spending it everywhere, you finally have enough left to invest in yourself. That is why silence can increase your value. Not because silence magically makes people respect you, but because silence can teach you to respect your own time, your own attention, your own boundaries, and your own peace. When you respect your energy, you become more intentional about who receives it. When you respect your time, you stop giving hours to meaningless arguments. When you respect your peace, you stop allowing every disturbance to become your responsibility. And when you stop reacting to everything, people begin to notice that they cannot control you simply by pushing the right buttons. You become harder to manipulate because you are no longer easily provoked. You become harder to distract because you know where your attention belongs. You become harder to pull backward because you have decided to keep moving forward. That is the strength of silence. It doesn't make you invisible. It makes you intentional. It doesn't make you powerless. It teaches you how to use your power wisely. It doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you understand that your words have value and valuable things should not be wasted. The second thing you must understand is that silence allows your actions to become louder than your announcements. There is a season in your life when you have to stop telling everybody what you are going to do and start doing it. Stop announcing every plan. Stop explaining every goal. Stop telling everybody what you are building. Stop looking for applause before the work is finished. There is something powerful about working quietly while everyone else is talking. Because when you announce everything too early, you invite opinions before you have even had the opportunity to see the vision clearly yourself. Everybody suddenly has advice. Everybody has a prediction. Everybody has a reason why it won't work. Everybody has a question. And if you are not careful, you can become so busy listening to everybody else's voice that you lose the courage to listen to your own purpose. Sometimes you need to protect the beginning of something. A new idea is fragile. A new habit is fragile. A new direction is fragile. It needs time to develop before it is exposed to everybody's opinions. You don't plant a seed today and dig it up tomorrow because you want to prove that it is growing. You give it time. You give it care. You give it patience. You let the roots develop where nobody can see them. And then one day what was hidden begins to become visible. That is how growth works. There are things happening inside you right now that other people cannot see. Your discipline is growing. Your confidence is growing. Your wisdom is growing. Your patience is growing. Your understanding is growing. And just because people cannot see the growth does not mean the growth is not happening. Sometimes the most important work in your life happens in private. Nobody applauds you for waking up and choosing discipline. Nobody sees the moments when you decide not to quit. Nobody sees the hours you spend learning. Nobody sees the times you choose patience instead of reacting. Nobody sees the moments when you could have given up but decided to keep going. But those invisible decisions eventually produce visible results. That is why you don't need to announce everything. Let the process work. Let your consistency speak. Let your results speak. There is a difference between telling people you are changing and actually changing. Anybody can make a declaration, but transformation requires repetition. Anybody can say, I'm going to become disciplined. Discipline is waking up and doing what needs to be done when you don't feel like doing it. Anybody can say, I'm going to succeed. Success requires preparation, patience, learning, mistakes, correction, and persistence. Anybody can say, I'm going to become better. Becoming better requires you to confront your weaknesses and work on them consistently. So don't spend all your energy describing the person you want to become. Spend that energy becoming that person. Your actions have a language of their own. When you keep showing up, people notice. When you keep improving, people notice. When you keep learning, people notice. When you keep your word, people notice. When you become more disciplined, people notice. When you stop chasing attention and start pursuing excellence, people notice. You don't have to tell them. Your life will tell them. There is a kind of confidence that comes from knowing you don't need to announce your every move. You become comfortable letting people wonder. You become comfortable letting people underestimate you. You become comfortable being misunderstood for a season. Why? Because your focus is not on what people think about your progress. Your focus is on making progress. That's a different mindset. When you are addicted to recognition, you need people to see every step. When you are committed to growth, you can take 1,000 steps without anybody watching. And sometimes that is exactly what you need. You need to become comfortable doing important work without immediate applause. Because applause is temporary, discipline is permanent. Attention comes and goes. Character stays. People may celebrate the finished product, but they rarely see the process that created it. They see the achievement, they don't see the preparation. They see the confidence. They don't see the uncertainty you had to overcome. They see the result. They don't see the repetition, they see the success. They don't see the failures that taught you how to succeed. So don't become discouraged because nobody is clapping yet. You may be in the preparation stage, and preparation often happens quietly. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to build. There is a time to announce, and there is a time to prepare. There is a time to be visible, and there is a time to disappear into the work. Learn the difference. Because if you reveal everything before it is ready, you can become more concerned with protecting your image than completing your mission. You start worrying about what people will say if you fail. You start worrying about whether people will laugh. You start worrying about whether people will question your decision. And suddenly fear becomes louder than purpose. But when you work quietly, you give yourself permission to make mistakes. You give yourself permission to learn. You give yourself permission to adjust. You give yourself permission to start again. Nobody needs to know every failed attempt. Nobody needs to know every setback. Nobody needs to know every time you had to change your strategy. You are allowed to learn privately. You are allowed to grow privately. You are allowed to make progress without making an announcement. There is no requirement that your journey must be public. Your life does not have to become a performance. You don't have to turn every goal into a public declaration. You don't have to prove your commitment by telling everyone about it. Sometimes commitment looks like silence. It looks like showing up when nobody is watching. It looks like doing the work when nobody is praising you. It looks like continuing when nobody believes in you. It looks like choosing consistency when motivation disappears. And that kind of commitment eventually becomes visible. People may not understand what you are doing at first. They may ask why you are so quiet. They may wonder why you are no longer explaining yourself. They may wonder why you aren't seeking attention. Let them wonder. You don't need to interrupt your process just because someone is curious about it. Keep building. There is a beautiful moment when people stop asking what you are going to do because they can finally see what you have done. That's when your actions become louder than your announcements. You don't have to say, "I am disciplined." Your consistency proves it. You don't have to say, "I am serious." Your commitment proves it. You don't have to say, "I have changed." Your behavior proves it. You don't have to say, "I am ready." Your preparation proves it. You don't have to say, "I know where I'm going." Your direction proves it. This is why silence can increase your value, because silence gives your actions room to speak. When you stop explaining every move, people have nothing to judge except what eventually appears. And when the results come, they speak with a language that arguments cannot compete with. Imagine someone who spends years telling everyone they are going to accomplish something. Eventually, people stop listening, not because the dream is impossible, but because words without action lose their weight. Now imagine someone who says very little but consistently works. They don't make promises, they make progress. They don't demand attention. They produce results. They don't ask everyone to believe in them. They believe enough to keep working. There is power in that, because eventually people don't have to take your word for it. They can see it. Your habits are visible. Your discipline is visible. Your growth is visible. Your work is visible. Your character is visible. And when your actions speak, you don't have to raise your voice. Let people underestimate you if they choose. Being underestimated is not always a disadvantage. Sometimes it gives you room. Sometimes it gives you peace. Sometimes it gives you the freedom to develop without pressure. Sometimes the person who thinks you are doing nothing has no idea how much work is happening behind the scenes. And that's okay. You don't need everybody to understand the process. You need to understand the process. You need to stay committed to it. You need to keep showing up. Because the goal is not to impress people during the journey. The goal is to become prepared for the destination. So stop measuring your progress by how much attention you receive. Measure it by how much you have grown. Measure it by how much you have learned. Measure it by how much more disciplined you have become. Measure it by how you handle situations that once controlled you. Measure it by how much more patient you are. Measure it by how much more focused you have become. Measure it by the things you can now do that you couldn't do before. That is real progress, and real progress does not always make noise. Sometimes it happens quietly. Sometimes it happens slowly. Sometimes nobody notices. But if you keep going, eventually what was invisible becomes undeniable. So don't waste this season trying to convince everybody that something's happening. Let something happen. Don't spend your time explaining the vision. Build the vision. Don't keep announcing that you are preparing. Prepare. Don't keep telling people that you are going to change. Change. Don't keep promising that you will become stronger. Practice strength in the small decisions nobody sees, because the small decisions eventually become the big transformation. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you are building. Every time you choose patience over reaction, you are building. Every time you choose learning over complaining, you are building. Every time you choose consistency over excuses, you are building. Every time you choose to keep going when nobody is watching, you are building. And one day, people will see the structure without ever knowing how many quiet moments created it. That's the power of letting your actions speak. You don't need to announce the mountain you are climbing. Keep climbing. You don't need to convince everyone that you are becoming stronger. Keep becoming stronger. You don't need to prove that your future will be different. Start making different choices today. Let your life become the message. Let your consistency become the announcement. Let your results become the explanation. Let your character become the evidence. And let your silence give you the space to do the work that words alone could never accomplish. The third thing you must understand is that silence creates mystery, and mystery creates respect. There is something powerful about a person who does not feel the need to reveal everything, not because they are hiding who they are, not because they are trying to manipulate anyone, but because they understand that privacy is a form of wisdom. You don't have to make every part of your life available for public discussion. You don't have to explain every decision. You don't have to reveal every struggle. You don't have to announce every opportunity. You don't have to tell everybody what you are planning before the plan has even taken shape. Some things become stronger when they are protected. Some dreams need silence while they are developing. Some decisions need time before they are shared. Some victories are better enjoyed before they are announced. And some parts of your life are simply nobody else's business. We live in a world where people are constantly encouraged to reveal everything. What are you doing? Where are you going? What are you planning? What happened? Who are you talking to? What's next? And sometimes the pressure to explain yourself becomes so normal that you forget you are allowed to say, I would rather keep that private. You are allowed to have a life that does not require an audience. You are allowed to have thoughts that you don't post. You are allowed to have goals that you don't announce. You are allowed to experience growth without documenting every step. You are allowed to keep certain victories between yourself and the people you trust. There is freedom in not needing everybody to know, because the moment you stop needing everybody to know, you stop living for everybody's reaction. You don't have to wonder whether they will approve. You don't have to worry whether they will understand. You don't have to anticipate their criticism. You can simply focus on what is right for you. That is where silence becomes powerful. Silence creates room to think, room to observe, room to plan, room to grow, room to make decisions without outside pressure. And when you have that room, you begin to discover things about yourself that you could not hear when everybody else was talking. You begin to recognize what you actually want. You begin to understand what matters. You begin to separate your own goals from the expectations people have placed on you. You begin to realize that some of the things you were chasing were not even your dreams. They were simply things you thought would make other people respect you. But when you become quiet, you can finally ask yourself a deeper question. What do I really want my life to become? That question can change everything. Because when you stop performing for people, you can start building for yourself. And there is another reason silence creates respect. People value what they cannot casually access. If you are constantly available to everyone, constantly responding to everyone, constantly explaining everything, people may begin to treat your attention as if it has no cost. But your attention has value. Your time has value. Your presence has value. Your words have value. You should not give them away carelessly. This does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean ignoring people who genuinely care about you. It does not mean refusing healthy communication. It means learning the difference between being accessible and being available to everyone. There is a difference. You can be kind without telling everyone everything. You can be respectful without giving everyone access to your private life. You can communicate without over-explaining. You can love people while still having boundaries. And sometimes the healthiest boundary is simply silence. You don't have to respond to every question. You don't have to answer every curiosity. You don't have to explain every choice. Sometimes a simple, I'm keeping that private, is enough. And if someone becomes angry because you established a boundary, that tells you something important. It tells you that they may have been more interested in access than connection. People who genuinely respect you will respect your boundaries. They may be curious, but they won't demand access. They may ask questions, but they won't punish you for keeping something private. They understand that trust is earned. They understand that closeness does not mean ownership. They understand that being connected to you does not give them permission to know everything about you. And when you understand that, you become more selective about what you share and with whom you share it. Not everybody deserves the backstage pass to your life. Some people only need to see the finished performance. Some people don't even need to be in the audience. And that's okay, because one of the biggest mistakes you can make is giving people information before they have demonstrated that they can handle it responsibly. You tell somebody your plan, they criticize it. You tell somebody your dream, they discourage you. You tell somebody your struggle, they turn it into gossip. You tell somebody your next move, they begin trying to interfere. And then you wonder why you feel exhausted. Sometimes the answer is simple: you gave too much information to the wrong people. Silence can protect you from that. You don't have to become secretive. You simply have to become discerning. There is a difference between secrecy and privacy. Secrecy hides what needs to be revealed. Privacy protects what does not need to be shared. Wisdom knows the difference. You should be able to look at your life and decide, this part is public, this part is personal, and this part is sacred. Not everything needs to be explained. Not everything needs to be posted. Not everything needs to be discussed. Not everything needs an audience. Some of the most meaningful moments in your life may be the moments nobody else knows about. The decision you made when nobody was watching, the habit you changed quietly, the lesson you learned privately, the boundary you finally established, the temptation you walked away from, the goal you continued pursuing when nobody encouraged you. Those private decisions build public character. And eventually people see the character without knowing the entire story behind it. That is mystery. Not pretending to be someone you are not. Not playing games. Not trying to make people chase you. Simply refusing to expose every part of yourself. You don't have to make yourself difficult to understand. You simply need to stop making yourself available for constant examination. Because when you constantly explain yourself, you can accidentally communicate that you need permission. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need permission to change direction. You don't need permission to set boundaries. You don't need permission to become more disciplined. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need permission to outgrow environments that no longer help you. And you certainly don't need permission to become a better version of yourself. Sometimes people will ask, why have you changed? And the answer may simply be, because I needed to. You don't owe them a 20-minute explanation. You don't owe them your entire history. You don't owe them access to your thought process. Your life is yours. And as you become more intentional with your silence, you may notice something else. People begin listening more carefully when you do speak. Why? Because you don't speak just to fill the room. You don't speak because you are uncomfortable with silence. You don't speak simply because you need attention. You speak when you have something meaningful to say. And when your words become less frequent, but more intentional, they can carry greater weight. Think about it. If someone talks constantly, eventually people stop paying attention. But when someone who is normally quiet finally speaks with clarity, people listen. Not because silence is some kind of trick, but because restraint gives words weight. Your silence can teach people that your attention is not automatic. Your time is not unlimited. Your presence is not guaranteed. Your words are not cheap. That can create respect. But remember, the goal is not to make people chase you. The goal is to become comfortable enough with yourself that you don't need to chase anybody. There is a difference. Do not use silence as a game. Don't ignore people simply to make them wonder about you. Don't withhold communication to manipulate someone's feelings. Don't become distant just to appear important. That is not strength. Real silence comes from self-control, not manipulation. Real privacy comes from wisdom, not fear. Real mystery comes from having a life that does not need constant explanation. When you become secure within yourself, you no longer feel pressure to reveal everything. You can sit quietly, you can listen, you can observe, you can let people reveal themselves. And that is another reason silence creates value. When you talk less, you can hear more. You can hear what people say when they think you aren't paying attention. You can notice what they do. You can recognize patterns. You can learn who is trustworthy. You can identify who respects your boundaries. You can see who only appears when they need something. You can recognize who celebrates your growth and who becomes uncomfortable when you begin changing. Silence turns you into an observer. An observation gives you information. Sometimes you don't need to confront somebody to understand them. You just need to watch their patterns. Watch how they behave when they don't get what they want. Watch how they treat people who cannot benefit them. Watch how they respond when you succeed. Watch whether their support disappears when you stop being useful. Watch whether they respect your no. You can learn a lot without asking a single question. That is the quiet power of observation. And once you see clearly, you don't have to argue. You simply make wiser decisions. You decide who gets closer. You decide who stays at a distance. You decide what information you share. You decide which conversations deserve your attention. You decide which relationships deserve your investment. Silence gives you time to make those decisions without being rushed by emotion. And the more you protect your inner world, the more you realize that not everybody needs access to it. There are people who only know the version of you that you chose to show them. And that's okay. You don't have to give everyone the complete story. You can allow people to know you gradually. Trust can develop gradually. Respect can develop gradually. Connection can develop gradually. You don't have to hand somebody the entire map of your life on the first day they meet you. Let them earn access through consistency. Let them demonstrate character. Let time reveal who they are, because words are easy. Anyone can say, "You can trust me." Character demonstrates whether you actually can. And silence gives you the opportunity to watch character before giving away access. That is why you should not be afraid when people don't know everything about you. You are not obligated to make yourself completely understandable to everybody. You are allowed to have depth. You are allowed to have layers. You are allowed to have a private world. You are allowed to protect the things that matter most. Sometimes the less you reveal, the more space you create for people to observe your character. And character is what creates lasting respect, not how loudly you announce yourself. Not how much information you share, not how many people know your plans, but how you live when nobody is watching. Let people discover your character through your actions. Let them discover your consistency through your habits. Let them discover your strength through your decisions. Let them discover your wisdom through the way you handle pressure. You don't need to tell people that you are becoming wiser. Let your reactions show them. You don't need to tell people that you are becoming stronger. Let your boundaries show them. You don't need to tell people that you are becoming disciplined. Let your consistency show them. You don't need to tell people that you have changed. Let your life show them. That is what happens when you stop explaining and start demonstrating. Your silence becomes a space where your character can speak for you. The fourth thing you must understand is that silence gives you time to listen, learn, and discern. There are things you will never understand when you are constantly talking. There are people you will never truly know when you are always trying to impress them. There are opportunities you will miss when you are too busy explaining yourself to notice what is happening around you. And there are lessons you will never learn when you are always trying to prove that you already know everything. Sometimes you need to become quiet. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you have something to learn. Silence gives you the ability to listen, and listening is one of the most powerful forms of wisdom. When you are constantly speaking, you are giving people information about yourself. But when you become quiet, people begin giving you information about themselves. They reveal their priorities. They reveal their attitudes. They reveal their intentions. They reveal their character. Sometimes they reveal things they never intended to reveal. And you don't have to interrupt them. You don't have to challenge them. You don't have to correct every statement. Just listen. There is a difference between hearing someone's words and understanding what their words are telling you. You can hear what someone says while also paying attention to how they say it. You can listen to the words while observing the behavior behind them. You can hear promises while watching patterns. And eventually, patterns tell you more than promises ever could. People can tell you they care. Watch what they do. People can tell you they respect you. Watch how they respond when you establish a boundary. People can tell you they support you. Watch how they respond when you begin to succeed. People can tell you they want the best for you. Watch whether they encourage your growth or constantly try to pull you backward. You don't need to argue with anybody. You don't need to expose anybody. You don't need to prove anything. Just observe. Because silence gives you the opportunity to see what noise was hiding. Sometimes you are so busy responding to what people say that you don't notice what their behavior is saying. You are so busy defending yourself that you miss the pattern. You are so busy trying to be understood that you don't stop to understand. And when you become quiet, you begin seeing things differently. You notice who only calls when they need something. You notice who disappears when life becomes difficult. You notice who celebrates you sincerely. You notice who becomes uncomfortable when you grow. You notice who respects your decisions. You notice who keeps trying to make decisions for you. You notice who listens when you speak. You notice who only waits for their turn to talk. You notice who brings peace into your life. You notice who constantly brings confusion. Silence sharpens observation, and observation helps you develop discernment. Discernment is knowing the difference between what looks good and what is good for you. It is knowing the difference between an opportunity and a distraction. It is knowing the difference between criticism that can help you and criticism designed only to discourage you. It is knowing when to speak and when to remain quiet. It is knowing when to stay and when to step away. It is knowing when to explain and when to let your actions speak. You cannot develop that kind of wisdom if you are constantly reacting. You need moments of stillness. You need moments where you step away from the noise and ask yourself what is really happening. Because sometimes the loudest voice in the room is not the wisest voice. Sometimes the person speaking the most has the least understanding. Sometimes the answer comes after everyone else has finished talking. That is why you should never be afraid of silence. Silence can become your classroom. It can teach you what people cannot. It can teach you patience. It can teach you restraint. It can teach you awareness. It can teach you how to recognize patterns. It can teach you how to think before you act. And one of the greatest things silence teaches you is that you don't have to respond immediately. You can pause, you can think. You can ask yourself what the situation really requires. You can separate facts from assumptions. You can separate truth from emotion. You can separate what actually happened from what you fear happened. That pause can change everything. Imagine someone says something that upsets you. Your first instinct may be to respond immediately. But silence says, wait until you understand. Wait until you are calm. Wait until you know what you actually want to say. Wait until you know whether a response will improve the situation or make it worse. That pause is powerful because sometimes your first reaction is not your best response. Your first reaction may come from anger. Your second thought may come from wisdom. Your first reaction may come from hurt. Your second thought may come from perspective. Your first reaction may come from fear. Your second thought may come from clarity. Silence gives the second thought a chance to speak. And sometimes that second thought saves you from making a decision you would later regret. This is why mature people learn to pause. They don't allow every emotion to become an action. They don't allow every thought to become a statement. They don't allow every irritation to become a confrontation. They don't allow every disagreement to become a battle. They understand that emotional control is not weakness. It is strength under direction. Anybody can react. Wisdom chooses how to respond, and silence creates the space where that choice can happen. There's also a lesson in listening to yourself. Sometimes you are so surrounded by other people's opinions that you stop hearing your own thoughts. Everybody tells you what you should do. Everybody tells you what you should want. Everybody tells you what they would do if they were you. But they are not you. They don't have your exact responsibilities. They don't have your exact experiences. They don't carry your exact dreams. They don't live with the consequences of your decisions. So sometimes you need to step away from the crowd and listen to yourself. Ask yourself what you believe. Ask yourself what you value. Ask yourself what kind of person you want to become. Ask yourself what habits are helping you and which ones are holding you back. Ask yourself whether the path you are following actually belongs to you. Silence makes those questions possible. And when you sit with yourself long enough, you may discover that some of the noise around you was never meant to guide you. It was only meant to distract you. You don't need 10 opinions for every decision. Sometimes you need one moment of clarity. Sometimes you need to stop asking everybody else what they think and start thinking for yourself. That doesn't mean ignoring good advice. It means learning how to distinguish advice from pressure. Good advice gives you perspective. Pressure takes away your ability to choose. Good advice allows you to think. Pressure demands that you obey. Silence gives you the time to tell the difference. And that is why you should never make major decisions simply because somebody is rushing you. If someone is trying to force you to decide immediately, pause. If someone says you must answer right now, pause. If someone wants you to act while you are emotional, pause. Give yourself time to think. Sometimes clarity comes after the pressure disappears. And when the pressure disappears, you can finally see the situation for what it is. Silence also teaches you that not every mystery needs to be solved immediately. Sometimes you don't have enough information yet. Sometimes you need more time. Sometimes you need to observe. Sometimes you need to wait and see what happens next. Patience is not doing nothing. Patience is allowing reality to reveal itself. You don't have to force every answer. You don't have to chase every explanation. You don't have to demand immediate closure for every situation. Sometimes time will reveal what you could never discover through an argument. People reveal themselves over time. Situations reveal themselves over time. Intentions reveal themselves over time. Character reveals itself over time. So give time permission to speak. You don't have to rush the process. You don't have to make a judgment based on one moment when you can observe the pattern. And when you start observing patterns instead of isolated moments, your decisions become wiser. You stop judging people only by what they say. You start considering what they repeatedly do. You stop judging opportunities only by how exciting they appear. You start asking whether they align with your values and goals. You stop making decisions based only on temporary emotions. You start considering long-term consequences. That is discernment, and discernment can protect you from mistakes that excitement cannot see. Sometimes silence will also reveal who respects you. Set a reasonable boundary and watch. You don't have to argue about the boundary. You don't have to defend it for hours. Simply establish it and observe what happens. Someone who respects you may not always agree with your boundary, but they can respect your right to have one. Someone who wants control may become angry because they can no longer access you in the way they used to. That reaction tells you something, and you don't always need to respond to it. You can simply learn from it. This is one of the greatest advantages of silence. It turns reactions into information. Instead of immediately becoming emotional, you can observe. Instead of immediately becoming defensive, you can learn. Instead of immediately confronting, you can understand. And understanding gives you choices. You begin to realize that you don't have to convince everyone. You simply need to make wise decisions based on what you have observed. Silence also helps you listen to opportunities. Sometimes opportunities do not arrive with noise. Sometimes they appear quietly. A new idea, a new skill, a new connection, a new direction, a new possibility. If your mind is constantly filled with noise, you may miss them. But when you create quiet moments, you give your mind room to recognize possibilities. You begin thinking more clearly. You begin connecting ideas. You begin noticing things that you previously ignored. Your creativity gets room to breathe. Your judgment becomes calmer. Your priorities become clearer. That is why silence is not simply the absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. It is the space where you can notice what you were too distracted to see. And sometimes what you discover in that space will change the way you move. You may realize that you don't need to respond to that person. You may realize that you don't need to pursue that opportunity. You may realize that you need to change a habit. You may realize that you need to apologize. You may realize that you need to set a boundary. You may realize that you need to keep going. You may realize that you need to slow down. The answer may already be inside you, but the noise has been too loud for you to hear it, so create quiet. Give yourself time. Listen before speaking. Observe before judging. Think before reacting. Learn before deciding. And allow silence to sharpen your ability to recognize what deserves your attention and what does not. Because when you learn to listen deeply, you stop being controlled by every voice around you. You become more thoughtful, more observant, more patient, more intentional. You begin to understand that wisdom does not always announce itself. Sometimes wisdom looks like sitting quietly while everyone else is arguing. Sometimes wisdom looks like asking one more question before making a decision. Sometimes wisdom looks like waiting. Sometimes wisdom looks like walking away. Sometimes wisdom looks like saying, I need time to think. And sometimes wisdom looks like saying absolutely nothing while you watch the situation reveal itself. The quieter you become, the more you may begin to notice. And the more you notice, the wiser your decisions can become. The fifth thing you must understand is that silence prepares you for the next level of your life. There are seasons when you have to become quiet, because the next version of you cannot be built in constant noise. There comes a point when you have to step away from everybody else's expectations and spend time discovering what you are becoming. You cannot build a new life while constantly listening to the voices of the old one. You cannot move forward if you are always looking backward. You cannot hear your direction when everybody else's opinion is louder than your own sense of purpose. Sometimes you need to withdraw, Not because you are angry with people, not because you think you are better than anyone, but because you need space to grow. Growth requires space. Reflection requires space. Learning requires space. Discipline requires space. And sometimes your greatest progress begins when you become comfortable being quiet. There is a season when you have to stop explaining where you are going and start preparing to get there. You have spent enough time telling people what you want. Now it is time to prepare for it. You say you want greater responsibility. Are you developing the discipline to handle it? You say you want success. Are you developing the patience to survive the process? You say you want a better future. Are you making better decisions today? You say you want to become stronger. Are you willing to practice strength when nobody is watching? The next level of your life will require something from you that your current level did not. It may require more patience, more discipline, more wisdom, more courage, more consistency, more self-control, and those qualities are often developed quietly. Nobody can give you discipline. Nobody can give you wisdom. Nobody can give you patience. People can encourage you. People can teach you. People can support you. But you have to develop those qualities through your own decisions. And many of those decisions happen when nobody is watching. That is why silence can become preparation. When the noise stops, you can finally evaluate yourself honestly. You can ask yourself difficult questions. What am I doing that is holding me back? What habits are keeping me stuck? What distractions are consuming my attention? What relationships are constantly pulling me away from my priorities? What fears are controlling my decisions? What excuses have I been repeating? What do I need to learn? What do I need to change? What do I need to stop carrying? Those questions are not always comfortable, but growth rarely begins with comfort. Sometimes growth begins when you become honest with yourself. And silence gives you the environment to have that honest conversation. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, it is easy to blame circumstances. It is easy to blame other people. It is easy to say, they don't understand me. They didn't support me. They held me back. They didn't give me a chance. But when you become quiet, you have to face yourself. And that is where real transformation begins. You start asking, what part of this is within my control? Maybe you cannot control what somebody said about you, but you can control how you respond. Maybe you cannot control what happened yesterday, but you can control what you do today. Maybe you cannot control whether someone believes in you, but you can control whether you continue believing that growth is possible. Maybe you cannot control how quickly an opportunity comes, but you can control how prepared you are when it arrives. That is maturity. You stop spending all your energy trying to control what is outside of you and start investing that energy into what is within your control. Silence helps you make that shift. It gives you the room to separate what you can change from what you cannot. And once you understand that difference, you stop wasting energy. You stop fighting battles you cannot win. You stop trying to change people who don't want to change. You stop trying to control every outcome. You stop trying to force every door open. Instead, you focus on becoming prepared, because preparation changes everything. When the opportunity comes, you are ready. When responsibility arrives, you are ready. When the challenge appears, you are ready. When the next chapter begins, you are ready. And preparation often happens when nobody is applauding. It happens in quiet mornings. It happens in difficult decisions. It happens when you choose your priorities over distractions. It happens when you continue learning. It happens when you keep practicing. It happens when you refuse to quit simply because progress is slow. There is no audience for most of the work that creates a strong life. The world usually sees the result. It rarely sees the preparation. People see the confidence, but not the years of learning. They see the achievement, but not the mistakes. They see the discipline, but not the days when you had to fight your own excuses. They see the strength, but not the moments when you had to choose courage over fear. That is why you cannot become discouraged when nobody sees your work. The work is still working on you. Every quiet decision is shaping you. Every disciplined choice is shaping you. Every lesson is shaping you. Every time you refuse to react emotionally, you are becoming stronger. Every time you choose patience, you are becoming wiser. Every time you choose to learn instead of complain, you are becoming more capable. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you are becoming more prepared. The next level is not just about what you receive. It is about who you become before you receive it. Sometimes you are asking for a bigger opportunity while you are still developing the character required to handle it. You are asking for greater influence while still allowing small distractions to control you. You are asking for more responsibility while still struggling to manage what is already in your hands. You are asking for a bigger platform while your foundation still needs strengthening. And sometimes the quiet season is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the place where your foundation is being strengthened. It is the place where you are learning things you will need later. It is the place where your character is developing. It is the place where your priorities are becoming clearer. It is the place where you learn how to keep going without constant encouragement. And that lesson is valuable, because if your motivation depends entirely on other people's applause, you will stop when the applause stops. But if your motivation comes from a deeper commitment to growth, you can continue even when nobody notices. That is why you need to become comfortable with quiet seasons. Don't be afraid when fewer people are around. Don't be afraid when your life becomes less noisy. Don't assume that silence means nothing is happening. Sometimes silence means everything is being rearranged. Sometimes the quiet season is where you discover your strengths. Sometimes it is where you recognize your weaknesses. Sometimes it is where you learn what truly matters. Sometimes it is where you develop the patience you will need for what comes next. And sometimes you need to be separated from certain distractions so that you can focus on your direction. Not every closed door is a loss. Not every distance is rejection. Not every quiet season is failure. Sometimes distance creates clarity. Sometimes quiet creates wisdom. Sometimes stepping back allows you to see the entire picture. You cannot always understand the purpose of a quiet season while you are inside it. But you can use it. Use the quiet to learn. Use the quiet to prepare. Use the quiet to reflect. Use the quiet to build. Use the quiet to strengthen your habits. Use the quiet to become more intentional. Because when the next opportunity comes, you don't want to be caught unprepared. You want to be ready. There is also a point where you have to stop seeking permission from people who cannot see your vision. Not everyone will understand your next step. Not everyone will understand why you are changing. Not everyone will understand why you are becoming more disciplined. Not everyone will understand why you are saying no to certain distractions. Not everyone will understand why you are protecting your time. And you don't have to make them understand. Some people will only understand your decision after they see the results. That's okay. You are not required to convince everybody before you move forward. If you know that a decision is thoughtful, responsible, and aligned with your values, you don't need a crowd to approve it. You can listen to wise advice. You can consider other perspectives. You can learn from people who have experience. But eventually, you have to make your own decisions. And sometimes that decision requires silence. You need to step away from the opinions long enough to hear your own judgment. You need to ask yourself what is actually right instead of what will receive the most approval. Because if you make every decision based on applause, you will eventually build a life that looks good to everyone else but feels wrong to you. Silence helps you avoid that. It gives you space to define success for yourself. What does success actually mean to you? Is it attention? Is it popularity? Is it recognition? Or is it becoming disciplined, capable, responsible, peaceful, and purposeful? Those are different things. And when you become quiet, you have the opportunity to decide which one you are really pursuing. Your next level may not look impressive to everyone. Maybe your next level is simply becoming more disciplined. Maybe it is learning to communicate better. Maybe it is becoming more responsible. Maybe it is developing a new skill. Maybe it is learning to manage your time. Maybe it is becoming more patient. Maybe it is learning how to walk away from unnecessary conflict. Maybe it is becoming someone who keeps promises to yourself. These changes may not receive applause, but they can change the direction of your life. Never underestimate the power of small private improvements. A person who becomes 1% wiser every day eventually becomes very different from the person they used to be. A person who consistently improves their habits eventually develops a different life. A person who learns to control their reactions eventually handles pressure differently. A person who learns to protect their attention eventually becomes more focused, and all of that can begin in silence. So when life becomes quiet, don't automatically assume that you're being left behind. Ask yourself what the quiet is teaching you. What are you learning? What are you building? What are you becoming? What are you preparing for? What distractions are you finally able to see clearly? What habits are you finally ready to change? What dreams are you finally ready to take seriously? The answers may not come immediately. That's okay. You don't need every answer today. You need enough clarity to take the next right step, then another, and eventually those small steps become a direction. Your life begins to change not because you made one dramatic decision, but because you repeatedly made better decisions. That is why silence and preparation belong together. Silence gives you the space. Preparation gives you the progress. Reflection gives you the wisdom. Discipline gives you the consistency. And eventually, your life begins to reflect the work that happened when nobody was watching. You become less interested in announcing yourself and more interested in developing yourself. Less interested in proving yourself and more interested in improving yourself. Less interested in being noticed and more interested in becoming capable. Less interested in explaining the journey and more interested in walking it. That is when your quiet season begins to have meaning. You realize you were not standing still. You were being prepared. You were not forgotten. You were learning. You were not wasting time. You were building something beneath the surface. And the person you become during those quiet moments will determine how well you handle the moments when your life becomes loud.